Hey Midnights! Thank you for listening to Midnight Overdose. Subscribe to our channel. Our next story, The Life of Demonologist Ed and Lorraine Warren. Edward Ed Warren Miney, September 7, 1926, died August 23, 2006, and Lorraine Rita Warren, January 31, 1927, died April 18, 2019, were American paranormal investigators and authors whose work gained significant public attention, particularly through their involvement in numerous high-profile cases of alleged hauntings and demonic possessions. Ed was a World War II United States Navy veteran and former police officer, while Lorraine was a self-proclaimed clairvoyant and trance medium. Together, they established the New England Society for Psychic Research in 1952, one of the oldest paranormal research groups. Ed and Lorraine were both born in Bridgeport, Connecticut. They met in the early 1940s, reportedly when Ed was working as an usher at a movie theater Lorraine attended. They married in 1945, and their daughter, Judy Warren, was born in 1946. Ed served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. After his military service, he attended Perry Art School, where he studied art. He initially pursued a career as a painter, traveling around New England with Lorraine and selling his artwork. It was during these travels that they would often stop at reportedly haunted locations, which sometimes became the subjects of Ed's paintings and sparked their deeper interest in the paranormal. Ed considered himself a self-taught demonologist, while Lorraine stated that she had been seeing auras around people and predicting the future since the age of 9, initially believing it was normal. Lorraine was a devout Catholic, as was Ed. They believed that demonic forces were more likely to possess those who lacked faith. Ed passed away in 2006 at the age of 79 due to complications from a stroke, and Lorraine died in 2019 at the age of 92. They are both buried at Stepney Cemetery in Monroe, Connecticut. Their daughter Judy Warren Spera and son-in-law Tony Spera continue to run the New England Society for Psychic Research in the Warren Occult Museum. Their investigations often blended traditional beliefs with investigative techniques, and they maintained an occult museum in the basement of their home, housing artifacts they claimed were imbued with malevolent forces, including the infamous Annabelle doll. The Warrens' work, which spanned over 5 decades, significantly influenced modern ghost hunting and inspired numerous books and films, most notably the Conjuring Cinematic Universe. The case of the Annabelle doll is one of the Warrens' most well-known, and its chilling details lie in the perversion of innocence. According to their account, a seemingly harmless Raggedy Ann doll, given to a nursing student named Donna, quickly became a vessel for unspeakable malice. Donna and her roommate, Angie, first observed the doll subtly shifting positions, later finding it in entirely different rooms, seemingly moving on its own. The eerie discovery of notes, scrawled on parchment paper in a child's handwriting pleading "help me," deepened their unease. The true terror escalated with Angie's boyfriend, Lou. He recounted waking in the dead of night, paralyzed with an unseen force, only to witness the Annabelle doll crawling up his body, its soft fabric transforming into something menacing as it attempted to strangle him. He later discovered inexplicable, distinct claw marks raked across his chest, marks that appeared and vanished with alarming speed, defying medical explanation. The Warrens concluded that no human spirit resided within the doll, rather, an inhuman presence, a demonic entity, was manipulating it, seeking to attach itself to the human inhabitants. The profoundly disturbing aspect is how a cherished childhood toy, a symbol of comfort and innocence, could become such a conduit for malevolent power, twisting trust into pure dread. Today, Annabelle sits in a locked glass case in the Warrens Occult Museum, a constant, silent testament to a chilling encounter. Recent social media frenzies in May 2025 about the doll being missing from its tour or the museum were quickly debunked, confirming its safety and continued existence in the museum. Differences with movie adaptations: the film Annabelle, 2014, and Annabelle, Creation, 2017, take significant creative liberties. In the movies, the doll is a porcelain doll, not a Raggedy Ann doll. The films invent an elaborate origin story for the doll's haunting, involving a dollmaker and a cult, which has no basis in the Warrens' accounts. The level of malevolent activity depicted in the films is also greatly exaggerated for cinematic effect, with the doll appearing far more mobile and overtly demonic than described in the real case. The original owners, Donna and Angie, are fictionalized or entirely absent in the film adaptations. The fate of the characters and the resolution of the haunting in the movies also diverge significantly from the Warrens' reports. The Perron family haunting, the basis for The Conjuring, 2013, unfolded in a decrepit 14-bedroom farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island, a house steeped in a history of tragic deaths and suicides. Roger and Carolyn Perron and their 5 daughters were subjected to a decade of escalating torment. The initial disturbances were subtle, chilling whispers echoing from empty rooms, the inexplicable scent of rotting flesh permeating the air, and small objects inexplicably vanishing or reappearing in different locations. Their family dog, a loyal companion, would cower and refuse to enter certain areas of the house, whimpering as if sensing an unseen horror. The activity intensified to physical assaults. Carolyn Perron described waking with a burning pain in her calf, discovering a perfectly circular wound that matched no known injury, which Lorraine Warren chillingly attributed to a spectral sewing needle wielded by the house's primary tormentor, Bathsheba Sherman. Bathsheba, a woman accused of witchcraft in the 19th century, allegedly cursed the land and its female occupants. The children experienced their own terrors, beds shaking violently, cold spots that made their breath visible, and unsettling apparitions of dark figures lurking in doorways. The culmination was a terrifying séance conducted by the Warrens, during which Andrea Perron, the eldest daughter, recounted witnessing her mother Carolyn levitate from her chair, her body contorting as she spoke in an ancient, guttural language, before being violently thrown across the room. The sheer endurance of the haunting, the direct physical attacks, and the insidious influence of a centuries-old malevolent spirit on an innocent family created an atmosphere of pervasive dread. Regarding their current status, Carolyn Perron passed away in 2013. However, Roger Perron and 4 of their 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Cindy, and Christine, are still alive, with Andrea Perron particularly active in discussing their experiences. Their youngest sister, April, passed away in 2017. Differences with movie adaptations. Andrea Perron, one of the daughters, stated that The Conjuring, 2013, is about 95% fiction and about 5% hard truth. While the film portrays a single, intense climax involving an exorcism, the real haunting spanned a decade with numerous incidents, none of which culminated in a single, dramatic exorcism by the Warrens. The film heavily sensationalizes certain events, such as the direct confrontation with Bathsheba Sherman, and combines several smaller incidents into one impactful narrative. The Warrens' involvement in the actual haunting was also much more limited than depicted in the movie, which exaggerates their role as central figures throughout the entire ordeal. The specific jump scares and cinematic horror elements are, of course, inventions for the film. Perhaps their most famous and controversial case, the Amityville Horror case, stands as one of the most infamous and debated, its chilling details rooted in recent, brutal tragedy. The Lutz family moved into a seemingly idyllic house in Amityville, Long Island, unaware of the horror that preceded them. Just a year prior, Ronald DeFeo Jr. had gruesomely murdered 6 members of his own family within those very walls. Within 28 days of the Lutzes moving in, the house began to unleash its terror. The family reported swarms of flies appearing out of season, even in the dead of winter. Walls would ooze a viscous, green slime, and doors would slam violently on their own. Foul odors, like putrid decay or sulfur, would spontaneously manifest. George Lutz, the patriarch, claimed to wake precisely at 3:15 a.m. every night, the exact hour of the DeFeo murders. The family also described cold spots that caused goosebumps despite warm temperatures, disembodied voices, and even instances of levitation, with George himself allegedly being levitated from his bed. The most terrifying accounts included glowing red eyes staring from windows, unseen forces slapping family members, and the iconic image of George Lutz's profound and rapid physical and psychological deterioration, depicted as him becoming increasingly paranoid and aggressive. The chilling element here is the idea of a house being so saturated with evil from a heinous act that it actively drives its new inhabitants to madness and terror, making it a prison of pure dread. As for the Lutz family, Kathy Lutz passed away in 2004, and George Lutz passed away in 2006. Differences with movie adaptations. The original book and subsequent films, especially the Amityville Horror, 1979, and its remake, 2005, heavily dramatize and add fictional elements to the Lutz family's claims. For example, police records do not show calls to the house during the 28 days the Lutzes lived there, despite the movies portraying numerous police visits. The famous hoof prints in the snow claim in the book and film is contradicted by weather records showing no snowfall at that time. The extent of physical damage to the house due to paranormal activity is exaggerated, and subsequent owners found the house's original hardware largely intact. Furthermore, the movie adaptations, particularly the 2005 remake, introduce entirely fictional events, such as George Lutz becoming possessed to the point of nearly harming his family, which the real George Lutz never claimed. The Warrens' role in the Amityville case was primarily advisory and investigative. They did not perform an exorcism in the house as sometimes implied by the broad narrative. For over a decade, Jack and Janet Smurl endured a relentless and deeply personal haunting in their West Pittston, Pennsylvania home, known as the Smurl haunting. What began subtly with misplacing tools and unexplained electrical surges escalated into a nightmare of direct spiritual assault. The family reported earth-shattering banging noises, the sickening smell of sulfur and rotting flesh, and the terrifying sight of shadowy figures gliding through their home. The haunting became physically violent. Their German Shepherd was reportedly thrown against a wall, and one of their daughters was inexplicably shoved downstairs by an unseen force. The most horrifying accounts involved direct, repeated sexual assaults on both Jack and Janet by the demonic entity. Jack described being pinned down and violated by an invisible presence, while Janet recounted similar terrifying experiences. When the Warrens became involved in 1986, they confirmed their belief that the house was infested with 4 distinct spirits, including a powerful demon. They reported witnessing poltergeist activity, drastic temperature drops, and even apparitions. They famously recorded hours of audio they believed captured the demon's guttural growls and taunts. The prolonged nature of the torment, combined with the deeply invasive and personal attacks, made the Smurl haunting one of the most disturbing and publicized cases of demonic oppression. Jack Smurl passed away in 2017. His parents are also deceased. Janet Smurl and her adult daughters are reportedly still alive and reside near the West Pittston area. They have reported no paranormal activity since the final exorcism. Differences with movie adaptations. While elements of the Smurl haunting appear in The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, 2021, as a reference, the case itself was the direct inspiration for the 1991 film The Haunted. The movie focuses heavily on the direct demonic attacks and sexual assaults, portraying them with heightened visual and dramatic effect. A key difference from the movie's potential portrayal, as The Conjuring, Last Rites is an upcoming film that may or may not cover this in depth, and the true story is the resolution. According to the Smurls and the Warrens, a local pastor, Reverend Joseph Adonizio, was credited with successfully ridding the house of the spirits after several failed attempts, not solely the Warrens. The film version tends to credit the Warrens more directly with the successful expulsion of the entities. The actual haunting also lasted much longer, over a decade, than what can be condensed into a single film's runtime, leading to a more focused and truncated narrative in the cinematic version. The Snedeker family's ordeal, which inspired The Haunting in Connecticut, 2009, began when they moved into a seemingly ordinary house in Southington, Connecticut, only to discover its grim past. It was a former funeral parlor. Carmen Snedeker's chilling discovery of mortician's tools in the basement was only the beginning. Her eldest son, Matt, suffering from cancer, began experiencing terrifying and vivid visions of an old man with pale skin and mutilated corpses, visions so real they caused him immense psychological distress. The physical manifestations were equally gruesome. Water running from taps would turn a thick, viscous blood red and reek of decaying flesh. Both parents claimed to have been sexually assaulted by unseen entities within the house. Carmen described being held down and violated, while her husband recounted similar terrifying experiences. The Warrens investigated and declared the house to be infested with powerful demons. The terror of a child, already weakened by illness, being tormented by visions of the dead, combined with the alleged sexual assaults on his parents by malevolent forces, made this case a profoundly traumatic and deeply unsettling experience for the Snedeker family. Philip Snedeker, the son, also referred to as Matt in some accounts, passed away in 2012 due to the return of his cancer. The status of his parents and other siblings is not explicitly stated as of now, but reports indicate that the Snedekers moved out of the house long ago and no subsequent owners have reported activity. Differences with movie adaptations. The film The Haunting in Connecticut, 2009, is based on the Snedeker family's claims but takes significant creative liberties. While some core elements, such as the house being a former funeral home and the son's visions, are present, the movie dramatically exaggerates the visual manifestations and the constant, intense terror. The film introduces elements like a ritualistic sacrifice and a more overt exorcism sequence that may not have occurred as depicted in the real accounts. The movie also condenses the timeline of events and focuses heavily on sensationalized horror tropes, rather than the more ambiguous and drawn-out psychological torment described by the family. Ray Garden, the author of the book the movie was based on, even expressed skepticism about the family's story after writing it, a nuance largely absent from the film. The Enfield poltergeist, a notorious case in North London, involved the Hodgson family and centered primarily on 11-year-old Janet. While the Warrens' involvement was brief and later debated, the chilling phenomena reported by the family were undeniable. The disturbances began with furniture sliding across floors, objects being violently thrown across rooms, and incessant, inexplicable knocking sounds emanating from walls and ceilings. Witnesses reported toys being flung, drawers opening on their own, and cold spots that felt like walking into a freezer. The most disturbing aspects involved Janet. She was reportedly seen levitating from her bed, hovering eerily in mid-air. Even more unsettling was the gruff, guttural male voice that frequently spoke through her, claiming to be Bill Wilkins, a former resident who had died in the house. This voice, heard by multiple witnesses and captured on tape, was described as rough and gravelly, often uttering threats and obscenities. The raw, uncontrollable nature of the poltergeist, its seemingly malicious focus on a young girl, and the chilling vocal manifestations of a supposed deceased resident, made the Enfield case a terrifying and well-documented example of extreme paranormal activity. Janet Hodgson passed away in 2016 at the age of 56. Differences with movie adaptations. The Conjuring 2, 2016, significantly exaggerates the Warrens' involvement in the Enfield poltergeist case. In reality, the Warrens visited the Hodgson home for a very short period and their contributions to the investigation were minimal compared to British paranormal researchers Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair, who spent much more time with the family. Playfair himself stated that the Warrens were not invited and that Ed Warren reportedly sought opportunities for a book or film deal. The film also introduces a demonic nun character, Valak, and a crooked man, who are entirely fictional and were not part of the original Enfield case files. The movie's dramatic exorcism sequence is a cinematic invention, as no such event was formally conducted by the Warrens or other investigators in the real case. The film transforms a complex and controversial poltergeist case into a more straightforward battle between good and evil, with the Warrens as the central heroes. Known as the Devil Made Me Do It case, this legal battle brought the concept of demonic influence directly into the courtroom. Arnie Cheyenne Johnson was accused of killing his landlord, Alan Bono. The chilling prelude to this murder involved the Warrens being called to deal with the alleged demonic possession of Johnson's fiancée's 11-year-old brother, David Glatzel. David exhibited classic signs of possession, speaking in guttural voices, displaying superhuman strength, having visions of a beast, and suffering from unexplained scratches and bruises. During David's exorcism, Johnson reportedly challenged the demon to leave David and enter him instead. Soon after, Johnson began to experience similar phenomena, including growling, trances, and visions. It was during one of these alleged demonic states that he committed the murder. The defense argued not guilty by reason of demonic possession, a groundbreaking and controversial legal strategy. The true horror of this case lies in the notion of a person being so utterly consumed by a malevolent entity that it compels them to commit murder. The idea that demonic influence could be a legitimate defense in a court of law was, and remains, profoundly unsettling, blurring the lines between personal responsibility and unseen evil. Arnie Cheyenne Johnson is still alive. David Glatzel, the younger brother who was allegedly possessed, is also still alive and reportedly leads a private, reclusive life. Differences with movie adaptations. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It, 2021, focuses on the Arnie Johnson case and his demonic possession defense. While the core elements of the case, David Glatzel's alleged possession, Arnie Johnson's subsequent murder of Alan Bono, and the defense's claim of demonic influence, are present, the film adds a significant amount of fictionalized plot and supernatural elements to create a more cinematic experience. The movie introduces a specific antagonist, a satanic cultist, and a series of interconnected demonic attacks orchestrated by this individual. This intricate plot, involving a larger conspiracy and a direct hunt for the demon by the Warrens, is largely an invention for the film. In the real case, the focus was almost entirely on Johnson's plea and the events leading up to the murder, without a complex narrative of a demonic cult or a specific human orchestrator of the possessions. The film also takes liberties with the timeline and the sequence of events to fit its narrative structure. Despite their widespread recognition, the Warrens' work has faced significant, ongoing criticism from skeptics and some paranormal researchers. These criticisms primarily revolve around a lack of scientific rigor, verifiable evidence, and accusations of sensationalism and financial opportunism. The most pervasive criticism is that the Warrens rarely, if ever, provided independently verifiable, empirical evidence to support their extraordinary claims. Skeptics consistently pointed out that the evidence presented by the Warrens often consisted of anecdotal accounts, questionable photographs, many later debunked as hoaxes or misinterpretations, and audio recordings that lacked clear, undeniable paranormal sounds. Critics stated that the Warrens' investigations lacked the controlled conditions and objective analysis required by scientific inquiry. For example, in the Amityville case, critics argued that the family's stories shifted and changed over time, and the evidence presented was more narrative than factual. Several of their most famous cases have been outright accused of being hoaxes or at least heavily exaggerated. The Amityville Horror is perhaps the most glaring example, with the original lawyer for Ronald DeFeo Jr. famously claiming that he and the Lutz family concocted the ghost story over many bottles of wine to make money from a book. This accusation, though denied by the Lutzes and the Warrens, severely damaged the credibility of the case in the eyes of many. Similarly, in the Enfield poltergeist case, other investigators present sometimes expressed discomfort with the Warrens' approach, stating that the Warrens were not invited to the house and that Ed Warren seemed more interested in potential film rights. These discrepancies suggest a portrayal of the Warrens as more interested in publicity than rigorous investigation. Critics frequently allege that the Warrens exploited the distress of vulnerable individuals for financial gain. Their numerous books, lectures, and later involvement in films and media deals fueled accusations that their primary motivation was profit rather than genuine paranormal research or assistance. Skeptics argued that the more sensational and terrifying a case appeared, the more lucrative it became for the Warrens, creating an incentive for exaggeration. Lorraine Warren's self-proclaimed abilities as a clairvoyant and trance medium, while central to their methodology, were a major point of contention for skeptics. Her reliance on subjective feelings and visions was seen as non-falsifiable and scientifically unverifiable. Critics noted that their conclusions were often based on what Lorraine felt or saw, rather than objective data. This approach is fundamentally at odds with empirical investigation, leading critics to label their work as belief-based rather than evidence-based. Some critics and former associates have raised ethical concerns about the Warrens' interactions with families and their alleged psychological manipulation. For instance, in the Snedeker case, the author hired to write the book about their haunting later stated that he found the family's stories to be inconsistent and that the Warrens encouraged them to embellish details. These claims raised questions about the Warrens' ethical responsibility to their clients and the truth. A former assistant also made particularly severe allegations of abuse and manipulation against Ed Warren, although these claims were widely dismissed by the Warren estate and did not gain significant traction. While the Warrens attributed the phenomena in their cases to supernatural or demonic causes, scientific and skeptical communities have proposed alternative explanations rooted in psychology, environmental factors, and known physical principles. Many alleged paranormal experiences, particularly those involving hauntings or possessions, can be explained by psychological phenomena. Suggestibility and confirmation bias play a role, where individuals who believe in ghosts or expect paranormal activity are more likely to interpret ambiguous stimuli, creaks, shadows, odd noises, as supernatural. The power of suggestion from investigators could amplify these interpretations. Hallucinations and delusions can be caused by various factors including stress, sleep deprivation, mental health conditions, or even exposure to toxic substances. For instance, sleep paralysis is a common phenomenon where a person wakes up but is temporarily unable to move, often accompanied by vivid, terrifying hallucinations, which can explain sensations of being held down, seeing shadowy figures, or feeling a malevolent presence, as described in cases like the Amityville Horror or the Smyrl haunting. Hypnagogic and hypnopompic hallucinations occur during the transition into or out of sleep and can involve vivid sensory experiences that feel real. In some cases, particularly those involving groups, like families, shared experiences of fear and belief can lead to an amplification of perceived phenomena, known as mass hysteria/social contagion. Finally, pareidolia and apophenia describe the human brain's tendency to find meaningful patterns in random data, seeing faces in shadows, hearing voices in static, leading to misinterpretations of ordinary sights and sounds as paranormal. The physical environment of a purported haunted location can contribute to phenomena often attributed to the supernatural. Infrasound, low-frequency sound waves, below 20 Hz, inaudible to the human ear, can cause unsettling physical and psychological effects, including feelings of unease, dread, anxiety, disembodied voices, visual distortions, vibrating eyeballs, and even the sensation of a presence. Old houses, drafts, or even external sources like traffic can generate infrasound. While definitive links are debated, some research suggests that fluctuating electromagnetic fields, EMF, can induce temporal lobe activity in the brain, leading to strange sensations, disorientation, a feeling of presence, or even mild hallucinations. Older homes with faulty wiring or unusual electrical systems could exhibit such fields. Paranormal investigators often use EMF meters, but critics argue that normal household electrical activity can cause spikes. Exposure to certain toxic substances, particularly gases like carbon monoxide, from faulty furnaces, for example, can cause headaches, nausea, disorientation, memory loss, and vivid hallucinations, mimicking many reported haunting symptoms. Mold, volatile organic compounds, or other airborne toxins could also contribute to such effects. A well-documented haunting in the American Journal of Ophthalmology in 1921 was ultimately traced to carbon monoxide poisoning. Lastly, structural issues in old houses naturally cause them to creak, groan, settle, and have drafts. Unexplained noises could be due to plumbing, heating systems, rodents, or shifting foundations. Changes in temperature could be due to drafts or poor insulation rather than spectral presences. When applying a scientific lens to specific cases, for the Amityville Horror, beyond the direct accusations of a hoax, skeptical analysis pointed to potential environmental factors. The house's age and construction could account for some sounds and drafts. The rapid psychological deterioration of George Lutz could be attributed to stress, sleep deprivation, or pre-existing conditions, exacerbated by media attention and financial pressures. For the Enfield poltergeist, scientific examination of the recorded poltergeist voice, particularly Janet Hodgson's, often led experts, including ventriloquists and audio analysts, to conclude it was likely produced by trickery, such as false vocal cords or simple vocal manipulation, consistent with a child seeking attention. Evidence of the girls faking events, for example, bending spoons on camera, hiding a tape recorder, also contributed to skeptical explanations. In the Smurl haunting, the claims of sexual assault and prolonged torment are particularly disturbing. However, psychological explanations like shared delusion, confabulation, or even pre-existing psychological conditions within the family have been proposed by skeptics. Jack Smurl's reported brain surgery in 1983 and subsequent short-term memory loss due to meningitis could have influenced his perception and recall of events. For the Snedeker family, the author hired to write the book about their haunting later stated that he found the family's stories to be inconsistent and that the Warrens encouraged them to embellish details. Skeptics suggest the family's stress, due to the son's cancer, and possible pre-existing issues could have led to heightened suggestibility or misinterpretation of events, exacerbated by the narrative framing provided by the Warrens. The initial discovery of morticians' tools could have fueled fear and led to a confirmation bias for haunting phenomena. Finally, the Annabelle doll case, like many haunted object stories, relies heavily on anecdotal evidence. The doll's alleged movements could be attributed to natural shifts, for example, slight vibrations causing it to move, misremembered observations, or the owners unconsciously moving it. The claw marks on Lou could be psychosomatic, self-inflicted in a sleep state, or a result of other skin irritations. The belief in a cursed object can create a powerful nocebo effect, where expectations of harm lead to perceived negative experiences. While the Warrens firmly believed in the supernatural origins of their cases, scientific criticism consistently offered alternative explanations rooted in psychology, environmental factors, and the human propensity for belief and suggestion. This fosters an ongoing debate about the true nature of the phenomena the Warrens investigated.